wishing all the women out there a very happy Women's Day. On the occasion of Women's Day, what at Answer and Talent 500 we did get to do is survey 3,000 women in technology space to actually get your views and perspectives of where do you see diversity, equity and inclusion. And we've got some very interesting insights and we thought we should share them with you. I am joined today with my colleague, Monica. Hi, Monica. Great to have you here.
Lovely to be here right now. And as you rightly said, no better occasion than to talk about some of the insights that we've drawn from our survey than on Women's Day. A little about myself. I've spent about 6 years with Answer now. I lead everything talent for the organization. I come with about 2 decades of experience in talent acquisition. And it's lovely to talk about our survey results today.
And a DEI champion too.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So I'm Smita Hemige. I head everything marketing at Answer. And great to be speaking to all of you all. To give you a little overview on the survey, we did speak to about 3,000 women in tech professionals and across India, and they came back with some very interesting insights. A key takeaway is that DEI is real, and DEI is also a journey that has fairly moved and progressed. And what we have gotten to see is that the IT industry as well as the GCC industry at large has actually made great leaps and bounds as progress. So, while we have given you a quick background, I think what we'll do now is delve into key specifics about the survey as well, and the interesting insights that we got to see. What do you say, Monica?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Sounds good. What's actually, how have we actually progressed? If you look at 6 to 10 years of experience across the IT services industry, and I think when we compared the diversity, equity and inclusion metric, IT services versus GCC seems to have done fairly well in that space, and and they are much higher than industry metrics. They are anywhere close to about 36% and above. Very keen to hear what you think has actually helped us fuel that growth.
I think for GCCs, diversity and inclusion is just not one of the agenda items that they would like to take. It's very intrinsic to what they intend to do. And GCCs, apart from just being the innovation hubs, are also the culture builders for organization. And I think in that context, they've kind of cracked the formula of saying that it has to be a very business-centric goal and just cannot remain in the HR parlance. And I think some of those very intentional efforts is what kind of is changing the ways. And just not looking at it as a metric on occasions when required, but being critical to some of the business KPIs that GCCs drive.
Absolutely spot on, because they all happen to be second headquarters, isn't it, in India? And if we go back, we also get to see that a lot of them are talking about women entrepreneurs and tech leaders that are actually available in this space. But what's also interesting is the number of opportunities that are there for leadership roles, and especially global leadership roles. And I have, come across a very interesting, factoid. A very large retailer in the home improvement space actually has 33% of their technology leadership team who are all women. Yep. And I think that's a significant number to the, less than 1% number that we had seen 10 years back. Yep. What's the trend that you're getting to see from the market?
I think similar to what you just said about a home retailer, another Canadian retailer, which is in the sportswear segment, they currently, talk about and do have people at the CXO and board level. So they have over 50% representation of women in that space. And that just talks to what an organization's intent into reality looks like. And, in that sense, they've also led the way for what their GCC in India is doing. They're currently about 40% of women in tech. And that kind of beats the industry average of about 21%. And so I think the opportunity is really being extremely intentional about it, having policies and initiatives that kind of show that inclusivity is not just the talk, but also you walk the talk. And some of those things kind of then encourage what you're able to build and be able to exhibit that some of the aspects that are being stated are also kind of coming up to life.
What has been predominantly with the number of GCCs and companies that you have worked with, where companies look at this as a metric and where companies look at this as a KPI? How do you see the two of them faring? And what do you think actually makes a lot more business sense, which helps in furthering the DEI agenda?
I think it's a mix of many things, especially focusing on tech industry in India. Um, what makes up the people ecosystem in organizations is quite reflective of what exists in the society in a certain sense. So there are, of course, long-seated biases that exist, and much of that is what comes into the workforce as well. And when an organization is being intentional, making it a business element, which drives operation success as diversity, equity, and inclusion, versus some of the, it just being the agenda item to kind of, let's say, we have good diversity matrix within us. The difference potentially tends to be in elements that you spoke about. Some of those biases are not easy to eliminate because they come from the reflection of what the society is and what's been the practices in the past. So the efforts towards kind of debottlenecking that and making changes will have to be multifold to be able to compete against some of those biases that exist. Many of the organizations that are kind of making it a business metric kind of drive this as a holistic initiative. So that basically would mean you not only have job descriptions which take care of the fact that they are gender neutral, but also the fact that the interview panels are reflective of that messaging that you're giving potential candidates of being an inclusive organization. So there needs to be more women representation in the panels that are interviewing. There needs to be a conscious effort to eliminate biases during the interview process, especially which are, erstwhile gender stereotypes that exist. And at the same time, with regards to what some of this mixed, well-balanced equilibrium in gender diversity that comes to in the workforce, how it influences back the business outcomes, it has to be tied to the complete story, which then kind of encourages leaders and their teams to kind of, do this as the front and center goal and not just as one of the many initiatives.
I do know that this was a beverage major, and they were very intentional about diversity, equity, and inclusion, while not lowering the bar on the number of, the women that they wanted to hire. They were also very intentional about certain roles and certain grades to be actually hired by women, so that they could be very intentional about, how they could create a very homogeneous organization. And that has really helped them in creating larger business impact because of the diverse nature of, thought process that they were able to inculcate. Now, taking a little, further around the biases that you did speak about, and want to understand from a talent acquisition, sourcing, hiring cycle, how do you think we can actually take away bias from?
I think the opportunities are, as we were talking about, I think there will be the human element that will still continue to be in hiring practices for at least the near future. And so while we attend to that by, making it a business-centric goal, but on the technology front, I think we have many opportunities in the hiring process right now. Many of the technical assessment or technical interviewing opportunities that are there, they can eliminate the gender bias that comes in when, a human interface is applicable and what we're doing in that segment. And I think that's especially in the tech space because there tends to be a bias not just from women or diversity in general, but also there can be towards their technical capabilities. There can be a degree of bias, and that gets eliminated when it is actually AI-driven or a system-driven solution that's being taken care as far as technical capability assessments are concerned.
I'd like to shift gears and actually talk about how can you break the glass ceiling. And I think that's a very interesting and important topic today to discuss.
Yeah.
Because while we go back and hire women into the system, and we've got this great focus around diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does it really take for women to have a voice on the table? What does that mean from, professional training and leadership training that can actually help them? Mentorship availability within the organization, and very importantly, equity in pay. Most women don't even ask for what they are really due worth, because they feel that they need to hold back for the inherent nature that they are.
Yeah.
So very keen to understand, with the number of organizations that you've worked with, over 125, 26 GCCs that you've helped hire and staff over many years, How have you seen this evolve? Especially when they are talking about, breaking that glass ceiling.
I think our survey indicates to the fact also that a significant amount of women are extremely ambitious with regards to holding leadership positions. Good aspect is with regards to the existing representation that we are seeing with some of the leading Fortune 500 organizations, many of the Indian multinationals as well, having women in leadership positions, and them obviously leading the way aspirationally for the belief system to be able to get sustained. But I think some of the organizations, also in addition, what they could do pretty intentionally is about having mentorship programs, women community programs, which are designed to kind of encourage these conversations. What women tend to get a bit lost or do not get the right guidance towards pursuing a career that is long-term, just not here and now, but potentially working through their career journeys to be able to eventually hold those leadership positions, is the right guidance of making the right career moves, being in the right, forums potentially to be able to make their voice heard, build their both equity as well as visibility within the organization, showcase their work. And much of that needs encouragement. It needs similar stories. It needs to hear other people who've been there, done that, to kind of guide the way. And I think what's been done well, apart from many of the hiring practices, making policies and work frames which are women friendly, is also having community and mentorship programs which kind of help further enable the ad job guidance to the women workforce who aspire to eventually grow into leadership roles.
I mean, I remember, where I worked earlier, very interesting point to note was we had the stand-ups. So in a stand-up, the ritual is that everybody around the table or the gathering actually speaks. So even if you are in a team that's predominantly male, you do get a voice.
Yeah.
And you do get a voice to actually share, your opinion. And more often than not, with now organizations actually adopting various forms of agile, I think these are great ways to actually also see how they can become a lot more inclusive. And I think they will become great, movements when we are thinking about creating, inclusive organizations for the future. So we did speak about how women have actually broken the glass ceiling. And I think a key metric or a key way that really helps them do that is for the organization to actually provide with the support that they need. I don't think just having, elements like flexible work arrangement or, family-friendly benefits are just the answer. I think there's a lot more to it, right? Yep. And Monica, what do you think are the other contributing key factors?
I think while all of those still matter, and not having them is going to be a distraction or discouragement to potential, women candidates that are looking at those organizations. But as we surveyed, women in tech, and we asked them that what are some of the leading factors that they consider while making choice. Interestingly enough, 90% of the women came back saying that they definitely look at mental health and related benefits and community support that the organizations might have to offer. Now, while mental health in various pockets has been a point of conversation and there is significant awareness about it, but the fact that this singularly stood out as the most important one is an interesting point to note. And I know while organizations are doing this at more holistic levels, but the fact that this is topping anything else that traditionally is believed to be influencing women's decision while considering benefits that organizations have or do not have is an interesting outcome. Other than that, of course, goes without saying that having childcare at premises does make a whole lot of difference to women, from considering that both their work as well as family life is in a balance and they're able to cater to priorities and commitments that they have on both parts. Goes without saying again that parental leave and just flexibility in general. So the hybrid work model is, well appreciated. Prior to the pandemic, it was much lesser firms that were embracing it. But I think one positive post-pandemic has been the belief system that hybrid work could be as productive and as embracing with regards to collaboration and other elements. And those have been some positive moves. And as organizations continue to keep this in the focus area, I think it will just encourage more and more women to not only join the workforce, but continue to stay in the workforce. Smita, so the next one that we're talking about is what organizations potentially can do to bridge the skill gap and opportunities with regards to mentoring. What are your thoughts?
There are certain things that's come from the survey. I think I'll pick the other not so popular percentages that we've gotten to see from the survey, which I think is fairly interesting. I think one key thing that has come up is women looking for mentoring. And I think that has become a really key area. And it doesn't mean that you have to only be mentored by somebody who's an expert in that space, but also can be a person who can help you look at building other characteristics and values that makes you a well-honed leader. It could be around managing people. It could be around how do you do conflict resolution. It can be around how do you manage priorities. And I think all of those are also mentorship. While you also need mentors whom they can look up to, whose journeys really inspire them, I think those will be the capability mentors that they will typically work with. So I see like a great cross linkage between these two streams coming together, especially in the areas of mentorship. The second thing that I think is really key and what women should be doing a lot more is come and be part of communities. There are a host of communities that are available, and these forums are all about peer sharing and talking about topics that truly will help them navigate their journey, especially in tech. And I think those are key ways that you can actually engage, network, build your equity in the market so that you're able to progress really quickly as on your journey, especially through your career journey.
Yeah, you're absolutely on point, I think, with that. And in the interim, I think organizations also potentially can look at what can be facilitated in-house. So resounding 80% plus respondents said that from being ready for the right opportunities within the organizations, what they feel is an opportunity is to be upskilling themselves, to have skills preparedness in a certain sense, but also have mentorship, as you said, with the right guides and career progression frameworks that kind of help enable growth for them. So I think those are all opportunities with what we do externally within communities, internal organizational communities that we build, and just kind of foster the culture overall of upskilling.
And I think just to add, I think while we've gone back, we've done multiple surveys, and because Answer works so closely with GCCs, what we've seen is in a lot of these cohorts which work on really cutting edge technologies, we see very low representation of women. Yeah. And it really puzzles me because I do see a lot of other women technologists who are as good as their male peers, but they for some reason hold back. But this survey has been an eye-opener for me because there's been a large number of people who also say that they're very keen to see what could be other upskilling opportunities that they can be part of, especially in emerging tech. And I think this is going to be a big area, especially around AI, where we could see maybe the other way around. We'll see maybe more women and data scientists than men.
Yeah, absolutely. I think soon enough, because I think there are many fields, especially science, we've seen the change happen, and I think deep tech is not too far away from that.
Traditionally in the industry, what we've gotten to see is we at times even start at 50% between men, women as diversity quotients. And as we get to 6 years, there's a term that I've heard just called the leaky bucket, where you suddenly start seeing a drop in the number of women who are, in the organization. It's possibly because India still sees women as primary caregivers. And as we move ahead, and when we cross the 12, 15-year mark and beyond, we see that the number slowly, dwindles down and it becomes lower single-digit numbers. And as we hit the board and CXOs, it kind of gets to 1 to 2%. What else do you think organizations can be doing, thinking out of the box? Because I think leadership pipeline does need diverse voices.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are many things that kind of add to the dwindling numbers as we go up into 10 plus years. Much of it is the early stages at potentially 6 years, and that segment 6 to 10 years where potentially women are going the family way, and as you rightly said, they considered the primary caregivers. So there are other family commitments that kind of let's say, pull them onto those at the lack of potentially the enough flexibilities being present in workplace, and they're often divided between the choices that they need to make. Some of the strides in the last decade, I think, that the industry's made at large is to kind of attend to that by creating all the benefits and policies that we spoke about, which are more inclusive in nature, which kind of also cater to this segment of workforce and kind of creates a barrier to that fall off that tends to happen, but also kind of encourage bringing back to workforce. So while we understand that people could make the choices of taking break at times, but how to encourage that workforce back into the fold. And I think that's been, again, a good positive move over the years, where there are some of the leading enterprises that have some of the best return to work programs that are running it, multiple years fairly successfully. And that's kind of encouraged significant population of women to come back into workforce. And there is opportunities to kind of the 2, 3, 4 years break that one might have taken to upskill themselves by having the right skill opportunities externally as well as within organizations to kind of bring them back into the fold. But also in addition, I think there is this perceived gap even for those that stay on in the workforce of what's the path to leadership in a certain sense. And while women are kind of working hard, they're working through challenges which are potentially larger than their men peers, which are men. I think this perception of the fact that where is all of this hard work going to be leading? Am I getting the right recognition? Are my efforts being acknowledged in the same fashion that it does for everybody else? Kind of further sometimes creates the mental barriers. And I think that's where the opportunities are with regards to the community groups that we spoke about within the workforce and the women leaders who are mentors, to be able to kind of, do a lot of show and tell, bring out and encourage people and show the path in many ways as what's potentially possible, but also a lot of investment back into potential women leaders that organizations can do with intentional efforts by having, women leader programs, for instance, which create leadership pipelining within the organization over a year, 2 year, 3 year kind of programs, giving them the right kind of exposure, the right kind of forums, which will, automatically then kind of bring a lot more of diverse voices in the leadership space. And then that kind of just builds the ecosystem, the right ecosystem for this to get enabled.
And I'd just like to add one more, and I think it's the power of allies, because the ecosystem at large or the organization as large also has a good number of male counterparts who work along with us. And I think it's the power of how do you have male allies who really help you on this journey, because the support and the encouragement and the mentoring that you can get from that community can't be discarded. So having great programs and creating great allyship between teams, and especially having somebody who can guide you on this leadership journey, I think is also going to be a big plus.
Yeah, I think yes. Considering what makes up the workforce, I think that's a great and an important element to be in play to eventually make the equilibrium that we're all aspiring to.
I think that was extremely interesting insights from what we got to see from the survey. Some of it did surprise us in terms of what women in tech wanted. So I've had a great time going through the survey results. What about you?
Absolutely. And quite a few interesting ones as we spoke through the conversation, and also breaking some of the obvious perceptions that we've had of the same.
So while we've broken some glass ceilings and stereotypes through the survey, we would encourage you to actually be part of our next year's Women in Tech survey. We hope for a lot more than the current 3,000 that we've got as responses, to actually double some of those numbers. And on this occasion, I'd like to wish everyone who's watching a very happy Women's Day.
And while we spoke about this today, let the conversation keep going. Let it not be a dialogue that we just do on the Women's Day. All of your voices matter. More power to us, and a happy Women's Day.